So I got them at gunpoint and I'm yelling profanities at them. If anybody moves, I'm going to kill them at that point. And I hear squealing tires behind me. Uh, One of the other training officers and a trainee come squealing up like that. We get them all hooked up, found a couple more guns in the car and everything. And so I'm in booking and stuff like that. And I'm seeing a whole different attitude going on at the desk. All of a sudden, they're looking at me going, I paid my dues, I had something happened. And because every trainee, and every person in any business, they have that defining moment, whether you passed or you failed.
Okay, can you introduce yourself for me, please?
John Rhodes,
John, who did you work for?
LA County Sheriff's Department,
For how long?
just shy of 31 years.
31 years. Okay. Before we get into your career, tell me about where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Hollywood, California.
Hollywood, California. And I don't want to date yourself, but Hollywood, California in what, the 50s, 60s?
I'm a 60s and 70s child.
60s and 70s child. So how was Hollywood back then?
It was great. It was great. I rode my bike to school, both at grade school and junior high school. Then, I went to Hollywood High for a brief stint and took the bus going up there where you could be out and about. And,
Yeah, California had a real. I gotta imagine, especially in the 60s, 60s, 70s, California had a real theme back then. I mean, it was just kind of a laid back. Everybody got along with everybody, and
I grew up in the surf and skateboard era.
right.
I know the guys that were from Dogtown, basically, Jay Adams, and Johnny Orlando and those guys. I knew them, surfboards when they were long, and then all transitioning to the short boards, and I've surfed all my life. From then I remember my dad taking me and a couple of my friends to the beach, and he would just sit there in the sand. If it was foggy, he'd have a blanket or a towel over him, and then we'd get out of the water. He'd drive us all back home, and at that point where you could do that.
Back in that day, in those times, did you ever get down to Mexico to surf?
Later on in high school, surfed Mexico a lot, where it was safe to go over the across the border.
Yeah.
And for a long time, when I was older, I had a good friend of mine that I worked with. A couple of us subleased I want to say a cabin or a little hacienda or whatever down at La Fonda that they owned because they were Hispanic, and people across the border couldn't own property down there in the beach at that point. So we just subleased it from them. We used to go down there and surf all the time.
Yeah.
On every weekend. I remember getting followed around by the federales because they wanted our truck or whatever there. I mean, it was still it wasn't safe, with it.
Yeah, so safe, but relatively, yeah, I get it. What did your parents do? What did they do for a living?
Well, my dad and mom, my dad was from Canada, and he was, in fact, he grew up in Winnipeg, and he was an electrician and a lineman that was on the original crews that put up all the high power lines from Ontario all the way out to BC with it. And he was a lineman. And he evolved into an electrical contractor when he was here. And my mom and dad were actually professional ice skaters.
Really?
And he was one of the original Muscle Beach crew.
Wow.
Yeah.
What brought him from Canada to the U.S.?
I'm not really sure what brought him there, but he met my mom, who grew up in Hollywood. In fact, went to the same grade school, the same junior high school, the same high school she did, and they got married and they built a house right behind my grandmother's house with it, and that's where I grew up with it. And they were in a Adagio on Ice, and that's a 3-person act ice skating called the Morgan Trio. And I've got albums of them practicing, with wooden dummies and stuff, and pictures of he and his partner throwing my mom over to other people, 8, 9, 10 feet in the air, with it, and skating around and lifts. My dad was a hand balancer and an acrobat, and that's what Muscle Beach was originally then. They weren't bodybuilders, they were all acrobats.
Yeah.
And hand balancers.
Did they ever, not necessarily, did they ever teach you how to ice skate?
Yes. Yeah. There was a ice rink called the Polar Palace. And so I started skating when I was real young. Then it burnt down, and so I lost that. But my dad, bless his heart, he was really a giver, and very interested in my brother, myself, and the elements that we were around. He acquired a bunch of tumbling mats, and he donated them to the grade school. And I think 1 or 2 nights a week, he would put on tumbling classes for any kids that wanted to come and parents. So we learned how to roll and tumble, handstands and shoulder stands on a 2-person, at that point. In fact, my wife and I went to the Circus du Soleil one year up in Santa Monica, and we got there early, so we went out on the end of the pier to a burger joint out there. As we're walking up, on the side wall of the burger joint were a bunch of black and white photographs, and we're looking around of old Muscle Beach, and they had the Ferris wheel there, a little carnival right there on the beach. And Muscle Beach is just south right there. Venice, I mean, just on the other side of the pier, basically. There used to be a Gold's Gym there or something, at that point. And there was a picture of my dad doing a hand-to-hand, him being the bottom man of the top guy, just standing there like that with them on a hand, with it. I go, that's Dad with it. And we got that picture at the house. And I went back. Wow. It was very funny. Then he transitioned into, as an electrician then, when I was growing up, he worked at NBC. So I was really young. He would take me to the Jack Parr show when he was doing that, and it evolved into the Carson show, because they filmed it at like 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I got to see that, but it wasn't there. And I remember seeing the Beatles up at the Hollywood Bowl because he was up there working that. These were all extracurricular, contract jobs that he was doing. Then he ended up working he was the plant superintendent for Shriners Hospital for a long time, ran all their mechanical stuff and everything with it. But heavily involved with Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts, Little League.
So he was around all the time for you then?
Always, we would always play ball together. But we also had our bad points too. Our personalities were the same. It was very hard to communicate to each other, maybe in the oldest one too.
Yeah.
With it. But, and that evolved into when I, went into law enforcement. I mean, my parents were adamantly against it.
Why?
Just the inherent dangers of law enforcement at that point, and wanted the best. And it wasn't something I planned. I mean, it was just a whim. I had my college degree, and I go, well, if I don't like it, I'll do something else. Yeah.
So there was no interaction. There was no something that happened to you as younger as a kid that drove you to law enforcement. I mean, what eventually got you in there?
I think I was a kid that was always on that edge that never got caught.
Okay.
You know, and I grew up in the era that the police were always right. I remember, you know, being real young. I think it was, probably 6th or 7th grade, probably in the 6th grade, whatever. I came home one afternoon. The police brought me home. Knocked on the door. My dad answered, and he's go, "What do you do?" You know, right off, and grabbed me and started ushering me into the house and everything. And they had to kind of hold him back a little bit. So, no, 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 no. He had his bicycle stolen and called us to take a report. We just brought him home. Oh, you know, at that point.
Yeah.
And I can see those dynamics have changed so much because I remember when I was working, I was always the one in the wrong. That little Johnny, he never did anything wrong. Well, he just shot a guy, you know. Oh, he would have never have done that. The lack of parenting.
Yeah.
And the closeness.
Yeah.
And as in retrospect, you know, he was always there for me. Never told me what I should do. Always gave me the pros and cons of this, sat down and talked about things, and let me make my own decision. And that was very apparent of when I left Hollywood High School and went to LA Baptist High School, a private school with it. And that, I want to say, he was a great influence on me growing up because he was always there. And as a baseball coach, he coached the little kids and then coached we called it a farm team then. They weren't old enough to get on to a little league team. And taught them the proper fundamentals of the sport, how to throw, how to catch, how to hit, how to bunt, and various other foundational aspects of that game with it. And he even made a magnetic baseball field on a board that if it was raining out, we couldn't practice, but we had to practice. And we just sat inside and situational drills onto it. What to do if the ball comes to you and there's a man on second base, you know, and you're in the outfield. Where are you going to throw the ball? And this was in Little League before you got into more organized sports. And it really, the full circle came along because I played sports for the church we went to with it. And there was a gentleman, Tom Cafferty. He was one of our coaches there and a youth director.
What was the difference between your relationship with your dad and your mom? Or was there a difference?
There wasn't much difference. My mom was always caring.
Mm-hmm.
Both parents worked.
What'd your mom
full
do?
time? She was a secretary for Immaculate Heart of Mary High School.
Okay.
With it.
What, one brother?
One younger brother.
Okay. So tell me, you just alluded to this. You basically get your degree in college and just kind of as a whim. What was it that kind of drove you to or even took that leap toward law enforcement?
Well, a colleague of mine that, you know, in college, playing college ball, his older brother's roommate was an LAPD officer. And all of us, the four of us, were great friends. I got them into playing rugby, and they really liked that back and forth. And I went on a couple ride-alongs with Jeff, who was an LAPD officer. And he was working in plainclothes assignments then, and I'd go out with them once in a while. I go, wow, this is kind of cool with it. And talking back and forth and meeting a bunch of the guys. I go, okay, fine. With it, I'm going to look about, becoming a reserve, at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And then I sat down and talked to one of the person that to become a reserve and asked them that $64 question going, okay, I'm a reserve now and I really like this and I want to go full time. What do I have to do? Well, you got to go all the way through back the process and go through the academy again and everything else. I go, that seems stupid, And one of the other guys in that group, he just goes, hey, LAPD's hiring. I'm going to stand in line at Van Nuys High School. You want to come and stand in line with us? That was when both departments only had 1 day hiring. And they would get like 10, 12,000 applicants for maybe 200 jobs with it. So I stood in line, got my application, filled it all out and everything, the whole testing process, went through my physical, went through my oral interview, took all the tests and everything, and got a 99 on the oral without any Vietnam points or military points. So I was good to go. All of a sudden I was getting letters that I was disqualified because, you had a separated shoulder or medically disqualified. So I had that written off by a doctor. Then I'd get another letter back. Oh, well, you had you had a very bad sprain in an ankle. We're going to let you get on with that. And I'm going, what the heck? I played college football. I was a reserve for the U.S. rugby team. And I was interested in getting into the Navy and flying, past the flight physical, and you're disqualifying me for all this stuff? So Jeff's captain looked into it for me and he goes, no, they were just hiring minorities and females.
And what year is this?
77.
So you're having essentially DEI back in 77.
Well, it wasn't quite called that. It was called
affirmative action.
Affirmative action.
Sure.
To do that, yes.
Wow. So they were just coming up with excuses and not hiring.
To do that. And then another a partner of mine that we were both tending bar at a nightclub, and he goes, hey, sheriff's department's hiring. And I go, really? What do they do? And the only contact I ever had with the LA County Sheriff's Department was getting a ticket coming back from surfing in Malibu on PCH. And I go, well, okay, I'll stop. I'm going surfing tomorrow. I'll stop by the station to see if I can get an application. And so I got us applications. We filled them out. And this was like in June. And I was already past went through the physical, everything, oral and all that stuff. And I got a call and I go, hey, you're going to get hired. We got you slated for a academy class, 187 in September. And great, no problem. And then I had to call them back because about that time, I got picked as an alternate for the U.S. rugby team going to England. So they put me on another touring team that was paralleling their tour where they were playing. In case they needed me, I was already in country and I could go and do that. And I go, great. So I told my background investigator and he goes, and I go, what should I do? And they go, well, that's like playing on the Olympics, so go do that. We've got plenty of scheduled classes going on at that point. I go, cool. So we'll get you in the next class. Well, the problem was I didn't come back into the country until 3 days after the class had already started, 188. They go, no problem, but we'll get you one right after the first of the year. So I was supposed to report to the academy February 4th. but I was staying in shape. And I was playing rugby still. Some guy takes my left knee out. January 29th. February 1st, they cut on my knee, and I come out of surgery in a cast from my toe to my hip. Called them, well, I'm not going to make that. And they go, well, give us a call when you're, here's the thing. Then Prop 13 came in, luckily.
And so Prop 13, can you explain it for the audience?
Well, that's when everybody was in financial problems. So they put a moratorium on all county and city hiring and various things like that to get more money.
Okay.
So, and you and I had talked earlier about it, this was a whim, law enforcement.
Right.
With it. And I'm a firm believer of divine intervention. That way, especially later on in life here, of why things happen, why things didn't happen, with it. And I alluded to that. I never planned my career. I never planned of going into law enforcement. It kind of chose me with it, and I made decisions younger in life. Like I had a chance to play for the Giants for a short period of time until I figured, I go, I always said that I got in the hit in the head at some point in time and knocked some sense into me, because there's some great ball players here and nobody's going anywhere, with it. And I don't want to get sucked into this whirlwind of being in the minor leagues for years and years and years and have nothing to fall back on.
Yeah.
So I need to pick up my football scholarships, from high school and throw my name back into the pool. So I don't say I quit, but I stepped away from it to make a better choice. I reevaluated and redeployed myself at that point, because quitting is not in my nature. With it. Tactically retreated.
But I'm assuming, at some point, you heal, LA Sheriff still wants you, and you go.
This is how weird the whole thing was.
Okay.
I started the academy February 1st. I went back to college and worked on my master's because I had enough units to apply for graduation. And I worked on my master's just so I could do PT every day at our physical, at our training center there. And with trained, physical therapists and people getting their degrees there and stuff like that. So it's state of the art. And I started the academy August 4th. They never once asked me to have a doctor's release or a medical again on it. And I ended up with the PT award in the academy.
How old are you when you graduate the academy?
24.
24 years old. Okay, where's your first assignment once you're out of there?
Hall of Justice Jail.
Okay, what are you doing?
I'm a jail deputy. I rack the doors and keep everybody in line. And the Hall of Justice was very iconic because that's where the sheriff's headquarters was, downtown. I mean, Maxwell Smart, he went to the telephone booth right there on that. I mean, it's right downtown, 211 West Temple. And many films, Batman was filmed there. It's very iconic. Sheriff's office, his office was there on the second floor. The detectives' offices were there. Then the top 5 floors of it were a jail, and they used to have the superior courts down just below it. With it, Manson was in the whole family. They were housed there. Every high-profile crook was housed there at one point in time with it. So I was working early mornings there, and did my time there until they closed it. And then I got sent to inmate reception center where everybody that gets arrested and that goes into the jail system has to transition through the reception center. This is when they get searched, clothes taken away from them, fingerprinted, photographed, jail attire issued to them, and then they get sent off to different modules in central jail.
Working in those two positions, do you learn anything that helps you out later on when you get on the street?
Well, everybody goes, I don't want to work the jail. I don't want to work the jail. But in hindsight, it's the best thing ever because you learned how to deal with your element that you're going to deal with every day out in patrol in a controlled environment or somewhat controlled environment because you're just a guest really in their environment. They live there. You're there 8 hours and then leave and come back and forth. So you really learned how to deal with that element and you learned how you're going to be conned every day and how you survive about it, and the trustees run the jail, with it. And, you have to work along with them because they're usually the ones not in the cells all the time. They're walking out about, with you and everybody else with it.
When we had spoken before, you had mentioned that the detectives, I don't know if it's detectives or homicide unit, kind of took you under their wing. Can you kind of talk about that?
Yeah, I had two gentlemen. They were working the homicide desk at night because it's all staffed 24/7. Somebody answered the phones, and they go, okay, X and Y, they're on call tonight, so they'll get the case, and they issued that, put it in the logbook, and everything else. Well, they would come up for dinner every night. About 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning. We would have dinner up there, food, and they would come up. And I would have to do a perimeter check. So I'd have to check all the doors and for anybody, because it is a public building, but it's closed to the public at a certain time in the afternoon, like 5 o'clock or something. So I just developed a relationship with them, and they gave me a lot of advice. In fact, one of them gave me his old patrol book that he made up because we all had to make up patrol books when we went to training. And that was addresses of hospitals, fire departments, phone numbers, various other things like that. And it was one of the small little 3-ring notebooks they keep adding to, and you put alphabetical markers into it. He gave me his, so I was, ahead of the game, going to patrol. And while I was, and he befriended me, and they gave me two pieces of advice that I always passed on. Was, first of all, they asked me if I was married, and I wasn't. And they go, don't get married until you're off training and patrol. Just because the stresses that you go through when you're on training for 6 months, and your shift might be over at 10 or 11 o'clock, but you don't walk out of that station until 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning when all your reports are approved, and then you're studying and everything else after that. You got court, you're always the low man on the totem pole. You have to be in early to get your car ready and make sure it's all serviced and full of gas, everything there, all loaded with all your equipment. You were the FNG. We can't go into what FNG stands for. New guy, F blank new guy. So, and it was all part of the learning element in training. So they asked me about that, and I, go, okay, fine. And then the other best piece of advice for mental sanity was, they go, don't hang out with cops after when you're off duty. Don't associate with them, because that tends to close down your world experiences and get a very jaded attitude, because you're element, at that point. It's just like if sitting in this room, this becomes our world. We have no idea what's going on the outside of that door with it, to now make better decisions, with it. And we always pick up traits by the people we associate with. And law enforcement, since they deal with the underbelly of society all the time, we're not liked by the public. And the reason we're not liked by the public is the only encounters the general public have with law enforcement is trauma has induced something into their lifestyle, whether they got robbed, they got shot, somebody got arrested, they're in jail, and you have to go there at that point. So they make blank assumptions that we're all bad with it. So, and that really made an impression on me, because I grew up in that 60s and 70s environment of the hippies and the generation and the beach lifestyle and everything else, with it. The drugs and everything else going on. I didn't do them, but I had friends that did. I had friends that, if they couldn't find something, they'd sniff gasoline out of their motorcycles, at that point. And I never got into it because I was athletics, with it. So that really helped. So, and that really helped me through my whole career. And places where I lived, I had a couple friends that we were roommates and worked together, and still are excellent friends now and go all around the world overseas together, with it working. But he has the same attitude that I did at that point. We always had a good time. We're always, having it around, with it, and cars and this and that, various other things. So,
How about, okay, so let's get to patrol. How long do you spend in the Hall of Justice and inmate reception before you get to patrol?
78 to, I graduated the academy in 78 in December. So it was about a year and a half. So I got out to patrol real quick because.
And I'm assuming you start immediately with a FTO, a field training officer.
Yes. And because Firestone had a reputation of being the toughest station to train at.
So you go to Firestone. How does it work? Do you pick that?
You put in a dream sheet of what you wanted.
And was Firestone on there?
Yes.
Why?
I just I had put in for West Hollywood, and I put in for some other stations that were close by and stuff, because I had good friends. I was playing on a department softball team when I was in the jails, and a lot of those guys worked West Hollywood. So I would go out on patrol rides with them while I was in the jail. So I was almost patrol trained by time I went to patrol with them. I'd go out, ride with them every week. And I'm going to put in for Firestone. I pulled all the other stations I wanted, and I only had one wish station.
But did you know that Firestone was traditionally the hardest?
Nope.
Oh, so you didn't even.
Well, I heard rumors of it, and we did patrol rides when we were in the academy. Okay. And I never worked Firestone. I always got sent to, I think, Temple. I went to Industry. I went to Carson for a while, because our academy class was very unique because of the Prop 13. they had a lot, the county, the department had a lot of retirements then. And there wasn't a lot of movement on the department to backfill from it. So they had to, they originally said, we're going to do an experiment. We're going to take all the top applicants and make an all deputy class out of it. And most of the other classes traditionally had outside agencies like Beverly Hills or Santa Monica, Whittier PD. They would put their cadets through our academy in with that. So they made an all deputy class. They took all the highest scoring people that had tested and they made one class together. And they were going to make an abbreviated class that was like less than, was about 2.5 months. So they condensed the 24 weeks into, about 3 months, with it.
But if you didn't know that Firestone was the tough station, why did you put it in there? What was the reason?
I had no reasons. Real.
Okay.
Hey, I'm going to put in for Firestone. I'm going to get out patrol. That was it.
Okay. So you ended up.
I didn't even really know exactly where it was.
Okay, for the audience, where is Fire? What area do you cover with Firestone Station?
Firestone is in Watts, South Central Los Angeles, 7901 South Compton Avenue.
So you're in the middle of it.
Yes. We borderline, SLA Shootout was 63rd and Central, which is just right across the center line of Central is the dividing line between LA City and LA County. It's an unincorporated area of the city.
For the audience members that don't know what the SLA Shootout was, can you talk about that? What was that?
Simeon, when Patty Hearst was Simeon Liberation Army.
Okay.
With it. And they holed up there along with the Black Panthers, which was that was their area, with it. So very anti-police, for it, very anti-establishment, at that point. Angela Davis was, part of it. She wrote an excellent book on them. Very interesting, probably one of the best books I've read with it. But they had barricaded themselves in this 2-story building with it, and ended up getting into a shootout with LAPD, and Sheriff's Department assisted, at that point in time, since it was neighboring station with it.
How long? I don't know if you mentioned this. How long were you on your FTO program?
Well, it's supposed to be 6 months. I remember my first night rolling up to the station was, I went out with my training officer and his normal partner. In fact, his partner, I'm not going to use names, with it. He and I played college football together and rugby together. Okay. Maybe that's why I put in for Firestone. I don't know, but I didn't know that much about them. Well, they were regular partners. And so I get one of them. And first night, I'm riding in the back seat in the cage as a third man. I can't get out. I can't do anything. I'm like this on the cage. Wow. Everything's a whir. I didn't even know where I was, let alone in case something happened, because it was all new. And it was at night. Street sign. I didn't know which way it was, north, south, up, or down. I mean, it was a whirlwind and moving so fast, because that station, when you started, you might be backed up with 4 or 5 calls, and you're just rolling hard to every call. And they're all hot calls, with family disturbances, fights, gun shootings, robberies, stabbings, dead bodies, and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm basically an observer in the back seat. It's a whirlwind. And then my training officer, he takes off for 2 weeks on a vacation. with it. Okay, I'm supposed to be on training with that. So I get exposed to working at the desk area, answering calls, take all the information, send it down, chow runs, and various other things. And then if there was extra personnel, they would send me out with them. And I remember about the second night working with this one guy. Very, very good street cop, but also had a very uh, interesting reputation on physical contact with trainees if you weren't doing things right.
Wow, okay.
I go, hey, wake up, or something like that, at that point in time. And phenomenal boxer, great athlete, great guy, smart, very, very good training officer. So I'm paired off with him most of the time because he didn't have a trainee at that time or something. But I go out with him, and one night we're working an overlap shift that starts about 4 and off about 2, and best hours. I always liked working that shift because everything happened. You were always busy. All the crooks were out all the time, out working at night. And hated working early mornings from 11 to 7 in the morning because I couldn't sleep during the day. So we make a traffic stop at 103rd and Central, Watts. And he goes up to the car, starts to get the driver out. Then all of a sudden he's yelling, gun, gun, gun. He's in a physical fight for a gun out at the car, rolling in the middle of Central. And I go, okay. Put out emergency broadcast and everything, involved in fight with that. Need help here. And because I still had 3 people in the car. So I got him at gunpoint and I'm yelling profanities at them. If anybody moves, I'm going to kill them at that point. And I hear squealing tires behind me. One of the other training officers and a trainee comes squealing up like that. We get them all hooked up, found a couple more guns in the car and everything. And so I'm in booking and stuff like that. And I'm seeing a whole different attitude going on at the desk. All of a sudden, they're looking at me going, I paid my dues, something happened. And because every trainee, and every person in any business, they have that defining moment, whether you passed or you failed. You did something where you froze. I just did what was natural for me at that point in time. And it weren't any easier with me, but the hazing kind of stopped at that point, very, very early in my training thing. Then I worked, my training officer was back. He found out that, and he was the type of guy that if we didn't have a felony arrest, we stayed out until we got a felony arrest. So if we got off at 11, we might not come in until 3:30 or 4 in the morning to get a good felony arrest. And I remember doing circles in a 2-block length on Central, making traffic stops, looking for dope or guns. We just go around in circles for it one night, and some nights you just didn't get anything, but most of the time there was something there.
Was there any surprises for you when you got on patrol? Was there anything that you didn't expect, or maybe it was all kind of after the detectives took you under their wing and you were doing ride-alongs and everything else? Maybe there wasn't, but
yeah, I don't think there was, because I was just like a sponge. It was like going to school. I had to learn all this. I had to learn. What the biggest surprise is that I get pulled away from my training officer like after about a month, and they put me on an overlap on days with another phenomenal officer. He was going through a divorce and he needed uh, to take care of his daughter things. So they put him on at 10 in the morning and overlap to like 6 in the evening or something like that. So put me with him and jump in the car. He goes, "You're driving?" And I go, "Okay." And he goes, "I'll take all the miscellaneous arrest, not reports, and you do the log, and I'll write the reports, the bird reports, or theft, or whatever, the menial ones. And anybody we arrest, you write the report." All right. Yeah. I go, "Well, okay. That's odd. Usually I'm inundated with everything." And then it went along from there. We kind of worked as partners, but still the training officer, training officer. And about a month, not even a month, they pulled me away from him. "You're working PMs and you're going to work with X." Well, X and I were like oil and water because we knew each other real well. We played football and rugby together. I couldn't do anything right at all. If I stopped the car, if I stopped the car, he'd be bailing out and I'd hit the brakes hard. He'd hit the door. And everything. And I'm saying oil and water that way, back and forth. We didn't jive at all until he turned around one night and smacked me across the shoulder. He just goes, "If you didn't realize this before, you've been off training now for over a month and everything. This is just a formality. So get your." I go, "Okay." Then we were in foot pursuits, hooking and booking as partners the whole time. And the other guys that I went out there with on training, they were still on training. So I don't know what happened. And I just, then it got to the point where they gave me my other partner, another real good deputy, really good deputy. And we gelled really well together onto it. And he even evolved going into homicide and everything else. Detectives, that. And we were always getting into good capers.
With LA sheriffs, were you guys always rolling around in 2-man cars?
In the county areas, because if we had 37 contract cities, and the managers usually, when they contracted with the sheriff's department, they would contract for X amount of deputies per 24-hour shift and X amount of cars with that. So they paid all the maintenance for the cars and upkeep on the cars, part of the contract, and then whatever the county charged them for the deputies. So those were always one-man cars, because one-man cars, they have more visibility. More cars, more visibility. But in perspective, they have less visibility, because a one-man car, if they stop and make an arrest or take a report, they've got to go someplace to write the report with it. With a two-man car, you're still driving around being seen because your bookman or trainee is writing the report as you're driving. They're bouncing around, keeping their head up and down, writing that at that point. Or if you make an arrest, one person's booking, one person's running the arrest by the sergeant and starting all the paperwork and everything, starting the report. And then once the crook's booked, you're off, you're finishing up that report, that passport, and then turn it in, catch a field unit sergeant to approve the report, or drop off in the station, drop it off in the inbox in the sergeant's office, and off you go with it. So in actuality, a two-person vehicle has more visibility than moving around.
You aren't on patrol super long, and you end up, hopefully I'm going to get this right, you end up going to Special Enforcement Bureau,
Yes,
which is essentially SWAT team for LA County Sheriff's.
correct.
Okay. How do you get there? Because how long were you on patrol? A year and a half, 2 years or so?
Yeah, about that. I don't remember exactly.
So
It
is that pretty short time to get on SWAT?
was very short time.
Okay, so first of all, why did you want to go to SWAT?
I
And-
didn't.
Oh, you didn't? Okay. So
I didn't know anything about it really.
So how do you end up over there?
Well, regress a little bit. After I'm off training, I'm working with my partner for a while. We're working about a couple months together. I get called into the office, and the sergeant's office door gets shut, door behind you, and there, and all the training officers are standing around there, and they go, "You're getting the next trainee coming in. We don't have enough training officers now. So you're getting one of the new guys coming in." And I go, "What are you talking about? I don't even know what I'm doing." And they go, "No, it was the consensus of all the training officers." So I ended up with a trainee, and that's when I really started to learn. When you have to teach, you have to know the stuff backwards and forwards and answer questions. And I guess I was smart enough to not BS anybody of going, if there wasn't something I didn't know, I would find out about it. And I would be honest with them and say, "Hey, I'm not really sure. Let's go find out what it is." So it became a teaching experience for that trainee also, a learning experience of where to find it. So I didn't just go off by myself and ask some Joe Schmo to, "Hey, what's the answer on this?" We would go research it, whether it be in the policy and procedures, the case law books that we had, with it, that we would get updates with it from the Attorney General's office. You'd subscribe to it, the legal and I forget what was it, the legal book or whatever we called it. Big 3-ring binder with it.
But that's an interesting perspective. Do you think somebody like that who's learning under you, where you're not just going, "Hey, kid, this is the way I do it," as opposed to you two are actually going and doing the research. So now your trainee goes, "No, I know this is right because this is where we found it."
Yes,
Do you think that that's a better way to go?
I definitely do think that,
Yeah.
with it. And I always, or the person, and it was something that, as a supervisor, I was sometimes the supervisor's nightmare, because it was, I go, well, the questioning, well, why? Now I'm questioning your authority if you're not really sure why or anything like that. Well, because I said so. You get that a lot. We've all worked with people like that.
Mm-hmm.
And because I didn't know, I want to know why. Why do we have air? Why does that wall have to be perpendicular to that? Well, if it's not going to support the ceiling. Oh, now I know.
Yeah.
Okay, it has to have 16 inches on center with 2x4s on it to support stuff. So I always wanted to know why. Why are we doing it this way with that? And that really helped me. I guess I was born just asking at that point, with it, and the things that I was exposed to with it, especially playing baseball. I was a catcher, and I liked being a catcher because I controlled the whole game, the whole field. I moved people around, this or that. I could tell just the way the guy was standing in the box what pitch he's going to have a problem with. What's the best pitches my pitchers had, with it, and have them do something that made it easier for me if I had somebody on base, with it. So, and that was the whys. Why are we doing this way? Why do you want to bunt in this situation or not? What's the outcome going to be? And that was, I think, how I grew up. And that really transitioned to when I was in law enforcement, I think, with it. Plus, I was a history major, and it was why I loved history in college because I didn't have to memorize anything. I'm lazy. I didn't have to remember, okay, 1776, we did this. Well, no, when you really look at history, that was the final part of that. This and this and this made that happen. So why, with it? Because it just didn't happen. They flipped a coin and we're going to do this. I mean, we had the French, we had the English, we had the Canadians, we had this and the Spanish going on, with it. Yeah.
I got you off track, but so why do you end up with SWAT?
Well, I always had a trainee, and we were always in booking and everything. And SWAT, Special Enforcement Bureau, part of their duty was saturation patrol. And they had to work and patrol a couple days a week with it when they weren't training or doing operations. They would come out and work different areas for patrol. And there were no calls. They just went out and took people to jail. And one guy, he was always after me. Hey, you put in for the bureau, put in for the bureau. Did you put in for the bureau yet? No, I don't. I have enough time. Yes, you do. Put in for the bureau. Put in for the. I don't have enough time. And this is an ongoing basis because they would be out sometimes a couple times a week or every other week or whatever. So, put it in. And some of the guys that were training officers that forced me into being a training officer, they had already gone to the Special Enforcement Bureau with it. And so I kind of got browbeat with that. So I acquiesced, put in an application, passed all the tests. And one of the teams came into the station and go, hey, you made the list. You're on the list and you're coming to our team with that. And I go, no. And we called it a pencil list right before the hard list, transfer list came up. And I go, no, I'm not. What do you mean? I said, I got pulled off the list. You did. What? Wait a minute. Stand by here. So the sergeant took off. He's making phone calls, comes back. Well, it didn't come from us. I found out it came from my captain. Because I went to talk to him because he wanted a suitable replacement. And I go, let's go. Two can play this game. And we're getting my trainee off training. I go, well, if I get another trainee, I'm going to be stuck for another 6 months with this. So I went in and talked to the scheduling sergeant. And I go, this is what's going on. And he goes, okay. I said, I'll work inside. I'll be the jailer. I'll run trustees. I'll be the dispatcher, complaint deputy. I don't care, with this, but I don't want to be hung up at that point in time. So they made me watch sergeant. I go, okay, PM watch sergeant, no problem. And then I was supposed to go in June then, and I went in September with that.
When you finally get there, what are you working on? What's the technical duties of the Special Enforcement Bureau?
Well, you got to learn SWAT tactics, officer survival tactics, shooting, rappelling, and later on we did fast roping, weapon systems. And you start in as a new guy, you go to SWAT school and you get exposed to all that stuff, how to do warrants, how to scout locations, how to make entry into houses stealthily or dynamically with it, how to move quietly. And it's an inundation of everything. And you never master it all until you've been there for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember we were working in some abandoned houses doing movement problems, and that's, going through a door, being stealthful, like we're hunting for somebody inside the location. And I'm the bad guy. I'm hiding, and they're going to find me, with it. So it gives me a chance to observe their movements and will learn from them from a perspective of the bad guy. And then the point man or scout, he just goes, all right, tell me what we did wrong. What did you see? I go, I don't know. He goes, yes, you do. Tell me what we did wrong. And so it was the thing that you learned from everybody. It didn't matter how experienced they were or how inexperienced you were. And sometimes the inexperienced person had the best perspective of everything. Because my philosophy as a trainer later on was, my job is to take you guys that know what everything you're doing is, to shake you up and to put the square edges on that block that over time you've rounded them off and it doesn't support weight, or like a balloon that once you tie it off after a period of time, the balloon seeps air and it starts deflating. My job as a trainer is to blow that balloon back up and to take your shortcuts that you develop, because we're human beings. Mm-hmm. We're always looking for a better way to do something. And a lot of times we can go good, break, and then it doesn't support anything at that point. And to put those squares back on, so now you're solid with your tactics and everything else with it. And that's what I learned in the first couple of weeks, and being a new guy at the jail. Oh, not at the jail, but at Special Enforcement Bureau. And then we started off in a evolution of team positions, with it. And working from the front to the back end of the conga line would be, you had your scout, then you had your backup, then you had your team leader, the sergeant, who's always number 3, because at the third position, you can observe everything going on, or the majority of things going on, with it. And then you had the 4th man, then the 5th man, and the 5th man alternated between that and usually the long rifle, the sniper, at that time with it. Then you had the spotter for the long rifle, the second long rifle, the newer guy. Then you had gas man. Then you had what they called bug, which is a backup gas man. And that's what you did when you were the brand new guy. You did the bug or you shot gas. Your weapon of choice was a 37 millimeter gas gun, and you carried all the gas. Okay. So I had, again, regressing. When I was 4 or 5, living in Hollywood, my dad taught me how to shoot. He, in our garage below the house, he took stovepipe, which is about 10 inches, 8 inches diameter with it, put 4-foot lengths, put 3 of them together, then made a plywood bullet trap with it that was about 2 feet deep, square. And inside that, he had 1/2-inch plasterboard stacked with about 1 inch, 2 inches in between each other, and had a 50-watt light bulb in it. And he put a target on there, bullseye target, and that's where the stovepipe terminated in there. At the shooting side of it, he had a 22 CO2 pellet gun chained into it. that I couldn't get the muzzle out at all if I tried. All I could do was get it back far enough that I could open up the bolt, put a 22 pellet in, close the bolt, but I wasn't strong enough to pull the cocking mechanism back. So he'd have to do it. Then he taught me sight alignment and trigger press, sight alignment, trigger press, the whole time.
Why did he do that? What was his?
I have no idea.
And I ask because it's one of those things to me, like, I know Canadians may be into hunting and stuff, but I get this impression that Canadians aren't big firearms guys. So you move to the States.
He wasn't a hunter.
Yeah.
My cousins, they were older, and we'd go out there and we'd go shooting 22s and stuff like that after this. But I remember at 8 years old, I got my first 22 rifle. But we weren't hunters, though. It was just target practice stuff.
Interesting.
So I never asked him, well, why did you teach me to do that? He just did.
Yeah.
So
how busy were you at Special Enforcement Bureau? How many, like, for example, I think we talked about this one year. How many warrants did you do?
Well, let's get back to what we did.
Yeah.
We would get requests from patrol stations that were having a problem in an area, burglaries, the Hillside Strangler. We were out on that task force all the time, running in plain clothes and cars and, doing saturation patrols in the areas that they hit. They might have a dope problem in a certain area. They would gangs or something, added enforcement on it. So we would just go in and we called it rip and strip. I mean, we would go in, just take people to jail and the streets would dry up, with it. So the patrol guys really didn't like us too much there because they weren't making arrests.
Because you guys had nickname Turtlehead and Rulers of the Night.
Well, Rulers of the Night started back in Isla Vista when Santa Barbara called the sheriff for assistance when they had the riots up there back in 71, early 72. Bank America building was burnt down. And they came in, and about a day later, the riots were over because they just worked at night. People went to jail with it. Plus, all the operations we did, since they were high-risk warrants, we would rather do them at nighttime, one for concealment. It was safer for the occupants because we could take them by surprise with it. They were less apt to aggress us or resist at that point in time. So it was safer all the way around with it. Less civilians walking up and down the street that might be collateral damage that happened if we did get into a shooting or they shot at us. So it was safer all the way around. So we operated at night for the most part. So that's how the Ruler of the Night came along with it. And the turtle heads were that we had to set aside. We looked different than everybody else. We couldn't wear mustaches there. We had to wear core fam shoes. We didn't wear boots, even though highly polished boots. We had to wear dress shoes. And we wore our helmets all the time to set us apart with it. So they know that we were different than a regular patrol deputy. We weren't fooling around.
Yeah.
So that's how we got turtle heads, by the crooks on the street. The turtle heads are here. And when we'd roll into the station area, we always had the SWAT van with us. So we'd convoy in, with it, 2-man units, convoy in, drop the SWAT van off at the station so it's secured, take our helmets out of the back windows, on. The only time we didn't wear our helmets was when we were inside booking somebody, take them off, leave them in the car. But so we stood apart. If one guy wore long sleeves, wanted to wear long sleeve shirts, we all wore long sleeve shirts that night. It wasn't mismatched or anything.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of team camaraderie and everything, and esprit de corps. Thing, and you better be thick-skinned if you went there.
I can only imagine.
Because you learn by your failures or your mistakes with it. And hopefully the mistake or a failure doesn't get somebody hurt with it. So your debriefings after every operation, you had a debrief and everybody had a chance to talk, with it. And they'd call you out, with it. Why'd you step off with your left foot? You should be stepping off with your right foot, da, da, da. Or that, or everything went well. We should have done this. We should have done that. We evaluated our tactics. And that's what I mean. You can learn by your mistakes or failures, and you come up with better tactics.
Mm-hmm.
And I've also learned that there's always a different tactic for the same thing with it. Doesn't mean one's right and one's wrong, but let's evaluate the strengths and weakness of each tactic. Well, let's put part of the strengths on this, and come up with a better tactic all the way around and keep it in our war chest, with it, because we might need it at that point in time.
Yeah.
With it. And it started off when we would do, high risk warrants. I remember the first, when I first got there, got out of SWAT school, and we were doing different things. We were doing a multi-location warrant up in Pasadena for a high-profile dope dealer and group. And they were a couple blocks apart from each other. And I remember my prowess came out that I was a good shot. So I ended up being the spotter, beginning sniper with it. And then a lot of times our first, the sniper, he would move up to the fifth man with it, because everybody wanted to go be the scout all the time. And it's a great position, with it. But my career, I excelled at shooting. So I worked a lot on the entry team. So I knew that really well. But I was always the sniper, and they were transferring from team to team to teach their new guys with it. I was wondering, well, why am I'm the black team? Well, why am I going to the tan team? And then I find out, well, we got new guys here, and we want you to teach them with that. Mm-hmm. And you're doing that because of this, without being on the quote training staff, which was the day team. But one of the first operations I went on, the multi-location, I remember setting up right off the freeway. So I had to drive down the freeway, get out of my car, climb over a fence, get up onto a roof of a garage, and I'm looking over at this 2-story apartment complex when the target location was on the top floor, and it had a little walkway that went around it. I remember getting up there. It's cold out, Pasadena, damp. I'm sitting up there. Here comes the team. They come rolling up. One of the guys, as the team gets out, get up into position, he gets on the PA system, because we announced our presence. We announced our presence on it. He goes, ho, ho, ho. This is the LA County Sheriff's Department. We got a search warrant from your house. Merry Christmas. On the PA system. And I go, yeah, I'm here. I'm home. At that point, a sense of humor, onto it. Even though you're serious, you have to have a sense of humor.
Yeah.
So they stick a diversionary device in through the window on a broomstick. It goes off, and there's about three guys sitting at the table where this comes in at, and they were eating spaghetti or something like that. The guys go in, hit the door. It's a back door into the kitchen. They go in. There's spaghetti and spaghetti sauce all over the walls and everything. Boom, bam, boom, bam. Sliding on the spaghetti. Everybody's dazed because the flashbang went off right in their face. And it was, you look at the humor of what happens.
John, let me ask you this, because I'm kind of detecting a pattern here. You go from, they're essentially assigning you from team to team to train new guys. you have this, situation in Firestone where you get identified as you're going to be the next field training guy, even though you don't have a lot of time necessarily. What do you think that people are seeing in you that they go, "Hey, let's let John do that because he's competent or he has the ability to teach these guys"?
At that time, I had no clue.
Okay.
I had no clue.
Can you look back on your career and go, "Yeah, maybe it was this. Maybe it was this when I was growing up that I taught this," or do you have an innate ability as a teacher?
I must have that, but I've never recognized it.
Okay.
I've had people say that to me now later on in my career for what I am doing now, with it. And so I didn't know. I thought I was, I'm messing up or something like this, with it. But the teams that I was on, I got exposed to a lot of good teachers, there. And one of them, he used to be a partner of mine at Firestone, and named Sid Hale. He's no longer with us. Phenomenal. I mean, he's recognized worldwide as a tactical guy. He's written numerous books and everything. He retired as a commander on their department. He came back actually as a captain of Special Enforcement Bureau. He was a chief warrant officer in the Marine Corps, been in every conflict since Vietnam. They had to give him another battle ribbon because there wasn't enough stars onto him with it. And he wrote a course called Tactical Supervisor course, I think it was. It was probably one of the best supervising courses that I've ever taken with it. But he was a hard charger, got two masters in different things and all that stuff. But he's the one that pulled me aside. He goes, "You're on my team now." He ended up coming to the Bureau as a sergeant, and he goes, "I need you to teach these guys, with that, because you're good at what you're doing." And I liked that position because it was like being a catcher on a team. It was my operation until they went through the door.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Yeah.
With it. And, I was one of the snipers for Van Cleef and Arpels, the jewelry store operation there, with it.
Can you talk about that? What was?
Well, it was one of those operations that a lot of good lessons were learned on it. Van Cleef and Arpels was a high-end jewelry store on Rodeo Drive, about a block north of Wilshire Boulevard, where Beverly Hills Hotel is there with it. They had some guy come in, get buzzed in to the security area there and come into the showroom. And when he was inside, he ends up assaulting the security guard there, which is a retired gentleman at that point. Took everybody hostage because they had locked him in. He was going to rob the place. Killed the security guard brutally. Took like a Rambo knife and stuck it down right about the C7 down, and he was in so much pain. He pulled the duct tape off his wrists, took his revolver. Blood was going everywhere. One of the patrons, he kills her because she's screaming hysterically with it. Beverly Hills comes, contain it, call us because we had mutual aid for Beverly Hills. Get all set up onto it. This was about 11 in the morning. I get there about 3 in the afternoon because we're doing reliefs at that point. The police chief would not relinquish the negotiations. He goes, "I'm going to do it." He was a product of the city, LA City, and then became the police chief of Beverly Hills. he takes over all the negotiations aspect onto it when we had our hostage negotiators there. Just a big fiasco. And then we had two commanders show up. One was our bureau commander that we were underneath him in his domain, and he was off that day. So the on-duty commander was there. They get into a big argument on who's going to handle whatever going on to it in the parking lot. So we have all this information going in from all our containment setup and everything. We get briefed, onto it. Yeah, okay, we go out, take our positions. I took over one of the sniper positions, and one of the original snipers, he was there. I took over his partner's spot. It was us up on top of parking structure looking at it. And it was a Beverly Hills officer there too. And I was asked, was anything change on the descriptions or any information we know? And I go, I have no idea if it changed or not. This is what we were briefed. You're the one that was briefed earlier, and you have more information than I do. You tell me if it's changed or not. So I go through line by line, my notes onto it. Nope, that's exactly what we have going on. Primary suspect, male, white, gray suit. That's it. Everybody else is either female or black. Okay. Go into it. Beverly Hills confirms it. Like that. So at about 11 o'clock that night, we also had keys to the whole building. And the original plan was that we were going to ladder across from the adjacent building to the top floor, covertly get in through the roof access, go down, clear it, then make an assault on the main floor where everybody's at. And we were going to use LAPD's RAM to do a diversion at the front of it, put it through the wall there. So everything come in while the team goes down in with it. No, you can't do that. Whatever. Okay. So now we're just sitting there twiddling our thumbs, and at this point. So about 11 o'clock, all of a sudden, there's motion at the door that I'm kind of watching on the south side on it. And we can see a group milling around inside with it. And I call it, looks like a centipede, because they have a black. What they ultimately did was they took the display cases, a black velour, velvet, or whatever, sewn them together and draped them over everybody so you couldn't see them. So they came out, made a left-hand turn, went down the sidewalk, past part of the parking lot where the planter box was, then made a left going into the parking lot, then another left, so they're going back towards the building, right next to a parked car at that time. So we're putting it out that they're coming out with it, and I know I was. We were leapfrogging for a good shooting position, on the roof to where we were at, the parking structure. And I ended up on the right side. My partner was on the left side. So we had angles on it. And we could hear and see the assault team running down the alley and people yelling. They inserted a diversionary device that went off over the centipede, the group there. And everybody went down. And guy at the head of the line went down away from everybody else, flat on his back, and he had what looked like a gun in his hand, and immediately sat back up and went to his feet like this, and as if to shoot somebody that was there. And we both had him in sight. my partner ended up shooting. I came off my target because one of the assaulting team members, his head came into my scope picture.
Mhm.
So I went off. I thought my round had gone off with it. And I had to actually physically check my rifle to make sure it didn't go off. So I had about a 3-pound trigger and I had about 1.5 pounds on it. So I go, whoa. And we both saw the same thing. What it turned out to be was the guy that was working in the store, and this backtracking from homicide investigation came in. He was the guy that buzzed him in, told him, the crook, to put the display cases and everything, got stuff and set it up and how to get out. And they were going to his car, and it turned out to be keys. With the assault team that came up and grabbed everybody, they found the gun, which was laying right not far from them. And they got everybody in custody. They had to tear them apart because they were all taped together. But the suspect, he was in the middle of that. And the only way we found him was we found the security guard speedy loader tucked into his waistband, with it. So the ultimate investigation is that they were in collusion with each other.
Okay.
With it.
Yeah.
And then what made it also a little more dicey is that Nancy Reagan was staying at the Beverly Hills Hotel. So we had the Secret Service cat team up on the roof watching us.
Okay.
They secured her in place at that point, in there.
Huh.
And our lessons learned was at any time we had a hostage situation, then we were going to take another team leader that wasn't involved in this, put them into the command post with the negotiators and to oversee the negotiators, because at that time, the philosophy with all the negotiations around the country were, if it goes tactical, we failed. So we'll do anything possible for it to go tactical, as opposed to work in conjunction with the tactical team to make it safer and negotiate him into a position of our advantage.
Yeah.
With it. And then also to make sure the command post would disseminate all the intelligence out to the tactical team. Tactical team was always putting information in, but nothing or very little would come back out to us. So lessons learned.
Yeah.
With that. So that changed our philosophy and how we did things back and forth. And then, that was in the 80s. Then I ended up getting transferred to, in 93, our advanced officer training under the academy to teach officer survival and tactics.
Okay, before we start talking about that, let me ask you, you and I had talked about this before we started recording. I've got, you hear all these comments about how militarization of the police. So tell me about, like, for example, I remember back in the 80s, 90s, watching LAPD with their big Bearcat, big vehicle, ramming doors with the big, the pick thing on the end of the vehicle. Can you kind of explain to the audience the necessary progression of equipment that police departments and maybe SWAT teams in particular get out on the field?
Okay. Back in the 80s, well, SWAT was in they weren't even driven. They were infantile state at that point, with it. And nobody made light mounts for the weapons. We made our own to mount a flashlight onto it. And now they have weapon lights that are this big to put on handguns back and forth. Yeah. We had nothing like that. we made all our equipment to make things, shields at that point. Nobody made them, then we finally got shields, with it. Our first vests were just Vietnam flak jackets that we wore personal vests underneath it with it. Never had helmets. Nobody made a ballistic helmet back then. 84, we had the Olympics. So we had every major counter-terrorist team in the world that had Olympic teams in here in LA. And we got to train with all of them and see what their equipment was back and forth. And they were in the same boat that we were. So now people have to realize that law enforcement is a semi-paramedic, paramilitary team with that rank structure, discipline, and everything else, with it. And we worked a lot with the military back then, cross training back and forth before it didn't become vogue with the government. But I mean, all the tier 1 teams with it, they came to us. We want to learn what you guys do because you're the best that we in the world, and we patterned ourselves a lot from SAS, from the Princess Gate stuff, weapon systems back and forth. And so we were going, okay, we're going to have all this stuff. We don't want another Munich going on, but if we do have a Munich going on, how are we going to get survivors out, casualties out? How are we going to rescue them? That is the safest way for us. We had no vehicles, radio cars. They're not going to stop anything, at that point. So I think Brinks or some armored car company donated an armored car to us. Cool. Okay. Well, we'll use this. Well, somebody had the bright idea. Well, let's test this thing, see what it is. Well, high-powered rifle round would go right through the sides of it, but it wouldn't go through the windshield because they're about 4 inches thick, like on an airplane. And we go, okay, we got all the old bulletproof vests that, the department had and hung them on the inside and everything. And then somebody made a deal with the government military. They gave us 2 armored personnel carriers, the old ones with the 6 wheels on them, that you put about four or 5 guys in the back and drive up. But we had to go get them. They were up at Vandenberg Air Force Base, so we had the county with their flatbeds go up there and bring them down. County Mechanical painted them black and white, and that was our rescue vehicles. Then there was a company evolved later on to it that they came out with the Bearcat. LAPD came out with a big ram to put on the Bearcat. And these were all set up to make it safer for us doing it, also make it a little more intimidating for the suspects that we went after, to coerce them going, hey, you're going to get hurt if you keep doing this. We'll give up peacefully and make it safer for the public if anything happened, that we could go in after them at that point in time. So it all revolved around safety when these came in. And these evolved out of the progression of what the military did with like their MRAP and various other things that they had been working on. And then an independent company took the idea and made these vehicles that are for sale for law enforcement and military and various other things with it, just to make safety all the way around.
But is it also fair to say that it was also as a result of keeping up with the bad guys?
So absolutely.
So say, for example, we talked about this in North Hollywood Shootout with the guys that were fully armored. And I think you said that up until that point, LAPD didn't have They couldn't carry slugs and they didn't have AR-15s.
Well,
right?
It's widely publicized that the officers there were that first arrived at the bank. They were outgunned because the suspects all were carrying AK-47s, yeah, fully automatic too. And some of the officers took initiative, went down to B&B Guns, and B&B Guns opened up everything they had. Take what you want. Here's the ammo, and take it out, because they didn't have anything at their immediate disposal at that time until D Platoon, LAPD SWAT team, rolled out there. And if everybody looks back at the news footage of guys running around in tack vests and shorts, that was D Platoon, because they were in the middle of working out. So they dropped everything and came as they were with it. That's the testament of all the SWAT teams in LA.
Yeah.
And between us and LAPD, we're hands down better and had better training on the West Coast than anywhere in the country.
Why do you think that was or is?
I don't know. I can't put my finger onto it. It's just that John Coleman and Ron McCarthy, they started the National Tactical Officers Association, and they're the godfathers of SWAT teams. And that association, spread across the United States. And so it really elevated the training, equipment, and it just kind of feeds off each other on development of equipment, because we developed all our own stuff back then, with it. I mean, we were, I want to say, what else was going on back at that time? We were getting a lot of airplanes hijacked all around the world in the 80s. And what's going to happen? What happens if we get an aircraft that comes into LAX and they want to refuel or whatever, and it's hijacked?
Yeah.
What are we going to do? Sit there, twiddle our thumbs?
Right.
Then we really delved into things on who had responsibility for that. Well, it's kind of two people have responsibility for it. The feds, HRT, FBI, they've got responsibility for anything like that only when the door's closed and they're away from the jetway. If the door's open, that's local law enforcement.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
And, well, where's HRT located? Well, they're back east. Back then, LA didn't have a tactical team like HRT. They didn't have enough people there. So we had a memorandum of understanding that we would handle it in conjunction with them for airplane intervention.
Mm.
So we became the authority on airplane intervention back then and taught.
So one story I want you to tell, because I know I have seen people commenting negatively on, like, you see the LAPD vehicle with the big ram on it. Can you talk about what you had told me about hitting a house and having another structure inside that house?
Okay. Back in the 80s, big thing was crack, cocaine at that point. So we'd have all these dope houses selling dope. So what are you going to do? You got thousands of dollars worth of product in there and money. What happens if the rival gang wants to come and take it from you? What do you do? What happens if the police come? What do? You fortify your house. So they put up all the quote narco doors. So all the windows are barred. The front door's big, heavy steel door on it, steel reinforced. So we started learning how to defeat that to get in safely, because we would do all the warrants for the narcotics units dealing with it, and same thing with LAPD, rather than have non-trained or less trained detectives go in. Why not have a full trained team go in, secure the location, and let the detectives do whatever they want with it? So we started off creeping up to the doors to make entry in, taking a climbing rope, tying it off on the bars, and put it to the rescue truck, which was a 1-ton Dodge Power Wagon. Go, they'd pull off. Then you'd have all the static energy in the rope. So it hit a certain stage, then you go wham, the door would come across. We'd move Cadillacs because the rope would get caught onto it, tear it down. And then that evolved to it. Well, it's not safe going up there, taking all that time doing it. So somebody came up with, let's make big fish hooks. So we took inch stock, ground it down, made a fish hook out of it, and they were about that long, set on a ring, so they pulled together off one rope, with that. That was all hooked up. Still used the truck to do that, but we could go up, and because now they were putting mesh right behind the bars and you couldn't get it in with it. Just hit it, step out of the way, boom. I mean, we pulled the whole front of the house off one time and almost scalped one of our guys. He got caught underneath it with the thing coming down on him. Just he was making entry. So LAPD came up with the idea, well, let's just take one of these Bearcats and, I don't even think it was on a Bearcat, I think, or one vehicle, and let's put a 20-foot Ram on it and just run it through the front of the house. And we can put it in and pull it back out and make a big portal going in. And then about that time, when all this was going on, and they did one incident that we were finding when we hit these doors, just inside the door in the front room, they had built another room on the inside, but out of steel with it, and having a steel door with just a little portal there that they would pull it down, do the transaction in there, because all the crooks would want to buy the dope, they would come in. Now they were locked in there. They couldn't get out. So they're less apt to rip them off because they couldn't go anywhere, with it. Change the money, they'd get their rock and they'd leave. And they'd have all the dope there inside. And so with that Ram, they did one that, they would pull the front of the house down, but then they had that steel room there and stuff.
Crazy.
Yeah. So, it's like a chess game. We do one move, crooks counter it with another move.
Right.
Back and forth. So that's the evolution of everything, coming along.
Yeah. So it's not just, hey, we want these bigger, badder weapons. It's an evolution of, hey, we got to keep the public safety. And then we have to have an issue with keeping up with the bad guys.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you see now, there are factions out there, whether they be the Crips, the Bloods, like these guys go out and train, with it.
Yeah.
And, you look on YouTube, you got military training right there.
Yeah.
Everybody knows. And you've got guys that were in the military bringing all their tactics back to it.
Yeah.
With it and explosives and this and that. We were going after people with Laws rockets, with it.
Yeah, I can only imagine what you're seeing in Los Angeles. Yeah. It's just probably crazy.
And we were averaging at one point, we had 5 teams. Then during the Olympics, we went up to full capacity at 10, all 9-man teams with a canine. So all the canines were assigned to Special Enforcement Bureau. So they would do they would go out if a station called, needed a canine for anything. They did the canine stuff, and they would do tactical training with us also. But they wanted each team to have its own dedicated canine. So the canine officer was assigned to each team with it. And so since I was one of the newer guys who got to ride with the canine officer, okay. But it was great training for me because I learned how to handle a dog net. And, I had the bright idea, well, what happens if you go down we got to expose all these guys to it. A lot of guys were afraid of dogs. They wanted nothing to do with them, of how to handle a dog if the canine officer goes down with it.
Okay, so now getting back to your career, you've got all this experience training people. I mean, either with SWAT, teaching the new guys, going back to you getting nominated as an early officer trainer on patrol. You're going to advanced officer training. Is that what it is?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
We called it Laser Village because we used laser reactive vests then and handguns at that time that shot a laser at it, and it would go off on a sensor.
It would seem to me perfect position for you. How do you end up there? Just because you?
Well, I got into a few incidents, and the sergeant there was he was prior SEB. He found out what was going on, and he got me over there.
Okay, but why? Okay, so he gets you over there. Was there ever any did you ever have any thought in your mind of, hey, maybe I should go to homicide? Did you ever have an aspirational group that you wanted?
The only one that I really wanted to go to was to step across our hall at SEB because we had 17 full-time paramedics. They were all SWAT trained because they all been on the SWAT team there.
Mm-hmm.
So they went to Harbor General and became paramedics at that point. And they did mountain rescue, diving, and that's where I wanted to go.
Why? Yeah.
It was exciting.
Okay.
It was exciting. I got to do everything.
Okay.
And also that we had an incident. We were going up to a location and we're doing a warrant onto it. It was in the late afternoon. And one of the guys that was he was a scout on the team that my team was assisting them outside containment. Went to holster his gun, had a discharge, got shot in the leg, and it severed it bifurcated his artery just below the knee. And I was one of the guys that ran up, grabbed him, and we started pulling him out of. We didn't know he did it at that time, or he got shot from the house.
Mm.
And we know he was just in the line of fire right in front of her. So we pulled him away. Paramedics, which we always had, we were the first tactical team in the country that had paramedics at all our operations. Everybody else would call fire paramedics to stand by a block away or whatever, right. Non-trained. Well, I'm not going in there. You're shooting and stuff like that. These guys they were armed and they wanted to get involved with everything. So we trusted them. And so I was one of the guys helping at that point in time. Then we really sat down and looked at things. We went, that $64 question, what happens if two of us get hit? We've only got two paramedics. And it takes two paramedics to work on one guy, or by county protocol, one paramedic and one EMT. So we pitched it to our captain, and he went, yeah, okay. So he made arrangements with the LA County Fire that myself and one other guy went to the last 4 weeks of the fire academy where they did all their EMT training and put us in that class. Just like when I got trained as a sniper, I went to the Scout Sniper School at Camp Pendleton.
Yeah.
With an abbreviated class, but I was inserted with one of their classes. Right. So I was doing everything they were doing. So I was doing everything the firemen were doing. Crawling into the fire tower with smoke and pulling people out in turnouts, cutting car doors and carcasses off. We had an old Sikorsky helicopter carcass, and they were cutting that up with the saws and everything and pulling people out with that.
Yeah.
And then I started flying and riding with all the paramedics. So I was doing what they were doing. I was doing mountain rescue work. So I was cross trained doing that, with it, and had to go through, since we were flying over water, we had to go down to Miramar and get trained in the Dipsy dumpster, with it. Because we were flying on little birds, and we would, the whole team would be flown into places like we had to go up to Antelope Valley fast. They'd put us in the helicopter and go up there. And we would deploy out of Sikorsky's. We were fast roping out of that all the time.
Had a hell of a career. I mean, and we haven't even gotten until the last part here. So let me kind of ask you some brief questions here. So at advanced officer training, what were you doing there? What was your responsibility?
I was teaching patrol guys and detective guys tactics.
Okay.
Pull over and approach, better ways of doing that. During doing search warrants, work up, prep, how to go through a door safely, how to clear a building safely with it.
Okay.
And then we were teaching crowd control also. It evolved into that. And, it was a good experience, with it.
Yeah. I mean, especially with all your background. I mean, I can imagine it would be invaluable for a patrol officer.
But that's where it really got funny, because the majority of the couple of the people up there, they never worked any tactical units or anything. There was a couple of us that did and brought that experience up to it. But when you get in front of a class, especially the hardened guys that work the fast stations like Firestone and Linwood and Lennox, it's like any training that you and I've gone to. If the guy doesn't have any credibility, yeah, okay, fine. You're just reading it out of a book and regurgitating it up to us and everything.
Yeah.
And, I walked into it with a lot of credibility with it.
But did you ever run into any resistance? Because I know cops for me training, cops are the worst.
Well, exactly. That's what I was getting at, is that, all of a sudden they realize, because I'm wearing an EMT tag on my uniform, and they went, "Oh, that's right, you were at SCB, weren't you?" So I came in with a lot of credibility, with it on training people. And back then, we were never taught in firearms training on the revolver, keep your damn finger off the trigger with that.
Yeah.
And then, we go, that's pretty smart. We got to be doing that. And so the resistance with it, when we had Berettas, we couldn't even get the guys to keep the weapon on safe with it. Well, you can't get it out. And we would go, okay. The resistance, we'd tell them all that stuff. So the guys that were really the hard-nosed guys, we'd walk up to them as they were doing their problems, and with the training Berettas we had that were all simunition, changed out to simunition, which took us a while to get. We would go up there and flip their weapon on safe. Let them go through this stuff, and they'd come out. They'd have to draw and engage somebody, and they're about spongy trigger. Never thinking about, okay, spongy trigger. Why is a spongy trigger? Why is it? Well, it's probably unsafe, at that point.
Yeah.
With it. And the reason why we did that was because we were finding that getting in and out of a car with the holsters that we had, your weapon can get inadvertently, if you're carrying it off safe with the levers up, get knocked down onto safe without you knowing about it. And you weren't developing that muscle memory of unholstering and taking your thumb and flicking that safety up. because Beretta hadn't come out with the G model that safety was just a decocker then at that point.
Interesting.
So getting them to do it, and then I was trying to think of ways for them to be a little more receptive on that. Well, we got to get on target real quick and draw fast draw and everything else. I go, okay. I'd have everybody in there pick a point on the wall. When I tell you, I want you to bring your strong hand index finger and point at it. When I tell you, and leave it there. Don't bring it down with it. Yeah, well, just do it. Just do it. So they'd come up. I'd go up, point. They would point at it. And I go, okay, now put your head down and sight down your finger. You're probably pretty much on target, right? And they go, oh, yeah. And I go, what do you think you're doing with your finger along the side of that Beretta? It's the same thing. You're pointing at it. Keep your eyes locked in on it. Then you can come down and just press the trigger when you have to, when you know the background's clear and everything else is, going along the four firearm safety rules, basically with it. Oh. All of a sudden it was making sense to him because I don't know. I don't know why I came up with that. I evaluated it afterwards. I just used reverse psychology onto it. Trying to make it easier and faster for them to do it, but in a safe manner.
Yeah.
Another way to expel the information on it. And because in college, I had my degree in history. I didn't want to be an attorney and I didn't want to be a teacher. I didn't want to be a teacher. And what did I end up? I don't know, with it.
So at some point, you get promoted to a sergeant. We talked. It was the same reason why I never wanted to do it. You never really wanted to promote because it's like, look, I don't need the bureaucracy. I don't need the paperwork. I like what I'm doing. Ultimately, why did you get promoted?
I kind of got goaded into taking the sergeant's test, pressured into it. I took the test. And back then, the county was doing something weird. I mean, they took all the top people because they banded all the people that passed the test.
Mm-hmm.
And then the people that were banded, the captains had input on who they thought should be promoted from their group. And I was still at AOT then, the academy staff. So I got put in the first 20 to get promoted. And then just before the promotions onto the pencil list came out. Well, the pencil list came out, then it got pulled in by the sheriff. He pulled everybody off that list and put in his handpicked people to get promoted. Okay, they get promoted. Big uproar came on that. Then I was kind of getting tired of AOT, so I said, some guys talked about it. You go to Narco. It's a natural transition from the SWAT team to go to Narco because you're doing warrants, you're going through doors and stuff like that.
Sure.
And you're teaching. So I go, okay, I put in for it. Well, I get transferred to Narco, and everybody thought that they were under the impression that if you were already on that list, on the promotable list, and didn't get promoted, but the captain already put you on that list of the ones that were going to get promoted, that on the next list coming out, you would be on that list. Well, it wasn't the case. I go to Narco. The captain in the Narco didn't really know me. He had his people he wanted, so he was putting the captain on every list were prompted to put their people on it. So I missed that list. So I was at Narco for about a little over a year, and they had another test. And my partner and I said, well, let's take this. I got the test, took the test. I was one of the first ones to get promoted off that test. I thought I had failed it. I called my partner, and on the way home, I go, and he goes, oh, I'm going to have to take this all again. I go, save me a seat. He goes, I'm going to have to do it. Next thing I know, I mean, I was on the list, and then I had two stations fighting over me. So,
And you end up going to the Marina?
Marina Del Rey, specifically to supervise the dive team and the harbor patrol boats. You know, based on my experience, my being at SEB, and I was a diver since 1975. I got certified when I was in college, and again, my instructor in college, it was a 120-hour dive class, and he used to be he was a UDT instructor, underwater demolition instructor for the Navy.
120 hours for your scuba certification?
Because it 1 semester long.
That's still a pretty long.
Yeah, you came out with not knowing what you were doing upside down. You came out as an advanced diver.
Wow.
With it.
Wow.
Then he asked me to come back the next semester to be one of his assistant instructors. And he ran a combat, the course was a combat divers course. I mean, he drown proofed you. He caught you swimming with your arms at all. Your arm were in your weight belt, and you were just swimming like that.
Do you ever look at your back at your career and some of the, like you're taking this advanced scuba stuff in college? Do you ever look at your career and go, man, this was destiny for some of these places?
That's what we had talked about before. I go, I never even wanted to be a cop. All of a sudden, I got exposed to this. Oh yeah, okay, fine. I'll do that. I'll try it and do that. And I never. It was a whim putting in for Firestone. Special Enforcement Bureau. They came after me. Every unit came and presented itself to me, and I was just okay. I'll put my foot through the door and get sucked into it. And the things that happened to me. The things that happened in my career at the Bureau paved the way to go to AOT. And the experiences I had at the Bureau and the people I was exposed to, these people kept coming back to me throughout my whole career, into even up until I retired. And they were from a lot of elite units.
Tell me a little bit. I want to focus on leadership with you a little bit. Tell me a little bit about your philosophy on leadership. Where do you think that came from? And the question I always ask supervisors, do you think leadership is innate or learned?
I think it's both.
Okay.
I think the innate part of it is that you have to be confident in yourself, that you can leave your ego at the side, with it, and to be able to think on your feet. And that comes along with for myself, the exposures that I had leading up to all this with great leaders at that point, and be forced into leadership roles, especially from the SWAT team. That grew onto it because I got thrust to be a leader in patrol. I didn't know what I was doing. So I can't make, what am I going to do with a trainee if he doesn't have confidence in me? So I had to elevate my game, and you become a teacher at that point. And the farther I got in my career, especially going back to narcotics and everything, and even on the SWAT team, I could see that we had guys that excelled. I mean, these are world-class athletes, and they excelled at things that they did, that if you were a good, strong leader, that could set the aside and do it this way because I said to do it this way, not as the reason why you should do it this way. We never had that at the Bureau. It was always a teaching moment, with it. And as a team leader, that it was even when I went back to narcotics and had a task force and even just station teams, that I had 5 people underneath me that I had to coordinate with it, is that I kind of made an analogy to myself as I don't have to be the best trumpet player or oboe player or know how to play the cello or anything like that. I just had to know a little bit about it and then coordinate everything to be harmonious with it. And as a leader, what are all the business models? How are they diagrammed? You have the first floor of all the people on the thing, and then it goes up to the very head guy at the top of the pyramid. Well, what does that show you? That shows you that everybody in that organization is supporting you. But what are you doing for them? That pyramid should be inverted, that you're at the bottom of it and you support everybody in that institution or organization, with it. Give them the tools because they're doing the job. Make their job easier. Give them the tools, and then you'll be successful with it. And that was my philosophy onto it, because I didn't like supervisors telling me because I said so. See, these are the bars.
Right.
I'm here.
Right.
With that, no, you just took the test, and that's it. You're an idiot.
Somebody mentioned this to me. I wanted to ask you this. Somebody said the thing that separates a good leader from a bad leader is those people who actually have done the job versus people who have not done the job, but they just decide that they want to be in charge. What do you think about that?
Yes and no, with it. Because everybody in that organization there has a skill. You might not have gone through any doors tactically, but you're a great organizer. You write great paper to acquire new pieces of equipment or whatever. You're great at organization, with it. So you have a place in that organization chart with it. But if you're in the leadership part of it, you have to acquiesce to the people that have done the job and learn from them to make your job a little bit easier, with it. Because the one thing that I did was a little bit out of the ordinary with especially working narcotics was if I had a detective that he had a warrant he wanted to do, I would make them do the operational plan and everything else with it. I would help them with it, but make them doing this. That becomes a learning process for them. Then every operation, they would have to go through the chain of command. So it would go to me. I was supposed to go to the lieutenant, tell him this is what we're going to do. Here's the operational plan. And I go, well, I'm lazy. I'm not going to do that. I would bring them. I would go with them to run it by the lieutenant because they had all the intricate knowledge of questions the lieutenant might ask, whether they be apropos to the operation or not, but it was also giving them the experience of doing that. And I would back them up as moral support and also tactical support, knowledge of the law and everything else.
So you're telling me this, and it just makes perfect sense to me. Where do you think that, it just seems common sense to me. Where do you think that comes from? Because I know I've had supervisors in the past that would never think about, well, I want you to go with me and explain this for a couple reasons. One, I don't think they want you in there because they want to be the front man and they want to be its fit. Where do you think that idea came from for you?
I think falling off a roof one time at the SWAT and hitting my head or something. I don't know. I don't know. It's just being lazy, I guess. I don't know.
Okay.
No, work harder. Don't work harder. Work smarter.
Yeah. Yeah. I
You
mean,
know,
you could say it's, yeah, I mean, no, certainly you could make the argument it's laziness, but it's not. I don't know. I just think it's easy. It's interesting following the path of your career and how.
And a lot of it was from Sid's class, technical science, with that and stuff that he wrote about. Because I remember the final, we had to do projects and stuff like that. It was a week-long class. And the final test was, we had X amount of time arbitrarily. They said we had 45 minutes to do a 300 question test.
Mm-hmm.
No way you can get that done in 45 minutes, with it. So you had to become a little think out of the box with it.
Right.
So we would divvy it up with people and they would do all the questions and everything. Group, they do 5, they do 10, or like that. And you put it all together and then we all passed. Yeah. And that was the test. Not getting the answers right, but trying to complete it at that time and using initiative and thinking out of the box and doing that. Yeah, that's interesting. And I always thought out of the box to start off with because that's what I was exposed to at Firestone. That's what I was exposed to my whole career, bits and pieces. And diving, you got a problem underwater, nobody's coming to save you. Right. You got to save yourself. Think out of the box with this. And thinking out of the box. And that's why I was kind of a supervisor's nightmare, because I was always thinking out of the box. And I always looked at it as a playing field. I would go all the way up to the line, that gray area, but I would never step over it. Where people would just always try to work right down the center at that point in time. But I was always there. And I told my guys to do it. Think out of the box. Okay, how are we going to get into this? How are we going to get into this house at 1:00 in the afternoon when they're sitting on the porch all the time? And I got a 3.5-foot chain link fence around with a gate on the front yard. How are we going to get into this house without them flushing the dough?
Yeah.
So we stayed to pursue with a helicopter, everything, going around the block 3 or 4 times, chasing a van and all this, radio cars causing the big commotion. What does human nature do?
What's up? Yeah.
Wow, look what's going on. Yeah, run. And like that. We'd get them pulled over right in front of the thing. Another van came up on the side. With that, everybody piled out, out of that and got up. And all of a sudden, they're looking here and we're here.
Brilliant.
And that's what was fun about the whole thing.
Well, that's what's fun about police work in general.
Exactly. With it. So, and then to their chagrin, they're laughing about the whole thing. Man, that was good. It was always the best thing, having the guys talk to you where you take them to jail.
Yeah.
With it. They're laughing about it. And I don't have to, keeps me from getting hurt. So,
right.
Yeah.
From the Marina Patrol, you end up going back and now you're in charge of major narcotics.
Yeah, I got sent back to our majors teams. And the majors teams worked, the station crews worked on the station problems in the neighborhood crews. They would, the patrol deputy would make an arrest, have dope, you'd interview the guys and work on the local things like that. Where the majors, we worked on larger volumes of cases, wiretaps and wires and various things, and did warrants.
I'm assuming you have interaction with the feds, DEA, FBI.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Not hesitation, any rubbing the wrong way? Like, for example, FBI is, sometimes they're known as kind of coming in and big boying you, right? Do you ever have that issue?
DEA worked with very well. I had a very good working rapport with Group 6 because every time they would get new officers out of training, regardless if I was working a station team, with it, because when I got sent back to narcotics, I had to go to 2 stations to clean up what was going on up there. Lack of supervision and various other things. So that took about 4 months or something like that. Yeah, 2 different teams. And they had, one of the teams, they had 4 A+ personality detectives that were outstanding detectives. But they were kind of running the whole crew and everything. So I just changed some of the style with it, with it. And again, just lacking, not supervised, not managed them, coordinated them. So they were more efficient.
Yeah.
And then we were unstoppable of what we were doing and having a lot of fun with it and no pushback from anything. Then I had a task force that was multi-agency, that I had 10 different departments working for me. And and again, Group 6, DEA, they would send their guys with me. And there was a couple guys that always loved working with us because we were always busy on my task force.
Yeah.
We came in late. It was a California grant for methamphetamine. And we were about 6 months behind the rest of the state. And by the end of the year, we had seized more money and more dope than the whole state combined, with it. And again, that was just coordinating all these different A+ personalities from different departments. So that was a lot of fun working with them. And I'm so proud of these guys. I had 3 guys out of that. They became captains on their own departments, with it. And I went to a retirement for an old friend that retired as the captain of narcotics and went to Haida. And one of the kids, and I call him a kid, walked up to me at this retirement. And he was down in LA area and I'm up here. And he goes, "You don't recognize me, do you?" And I go, yeah. He goes, he tells me his name. I go, yeah. And he goes, "He was a captain. He's a captain now." And he just thanks for, I learned a lot from you and stuff like that. Take care.
Yeah, that's got to be rewarding.
And I just go, wow, I'm glad. And, with it. And I kind of gone through life. And even what I'm doing now, doing, self-defense and firearms training. If I can say one thing that saved somebody, that made an impression, that saved their life, I've done my job.
Yeah.
At that point, it's my turn to put back into the system instead of just keep taking it out. Because I had people ahead of me that took the time to teach me.
While we're on the subject, do you have a company? Or are you doing training for civilians? What are you doing?
I partnered with a local guy up here that our paths crossed in the 80s.
Okay.
With it. And we teach CCW classes, and also I do personalized firearms training. It's not a cool course. I do one-on-one. I'll take whatever your skill level is, from novice, never even picked up a gun, to the tactical self-defense stuff.
Right.
With that and long-range shooting, sniper stuff. And I work as a contractor for Homeland Security, DOD, and State Department, going all around the world teaching firearms, quick reaction training, and also VBSS, which is vessel boarding, security, and searching.
Do you have a company? You want to mention it?
No, I mean,
Okay. Okay. So let me ask you some of the last questions I always ask. Did law enforcement affect your family?
It took one divorce, with it, and never had kids because I felt that it wasn't fair to raise a family, with it. I was never around. And the hardest thing for me was after I retired, I looked back. I'd get up, go to the bathroom in the middle of the night. I'd come back, I'd check my phone. The wife would go, "Who's that? You got a girlfriend? And why are you always checking your phone and stuff?" Well, I've lived off a pager, a cell phone, two pagers, two cell phones, my whole career, with it. So my cell phone, a BlackBerry, and everything else. And what I miss? Did I sleep through something?
Yeah.
With it, because I was gone the whole time.
How about this? Can you look back on your career from when you started to even now? Did being in law enforcement affect the way that you see people and see people in society?
I'm more realistic about everything with it. And part of the stuff that I teach is being aware of your surroundings with it, from martial arts and everything that I have done with that, and my philosophy is when I teach my clients and I teach CCW stuff, avoid the situation. Don't get involved, if you don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
With that.
Do you see yourself as cynical though?
Not really.
Okay.
I just kind of laugh at it.
Okay.
Do you think that going back to that very first lesson that you learned from those homicide detectives of not really associating with police officers, do you think that helped over
Yes.
the years?
Very much so. Because if you're around that group the whole time, you become like-minded, and most of them are very cynical because that's all they've exposed themselves to.
Right.
I never went to okay, we get off at 6. We're going to meet at the park and drink until 12. And I go, why? I don't want a headache. I want to go to bed, I want to go surf. I want to go ride my bicycle.
Yeah.
Hell, I was at the Bureau. I went to Bali for a month surfing. So 7 different islands. That's my lifestyle with pro surfers. So
That seems pretty good to me.
Yeah. So it was a job that supported my lifestyle.
Looking back on your career, is there anything that you would do different?
No.
But you had a hell of a career, so I just
because it goes back to the thing. I didn't do any of my career. It did me. It found me. I just had to be naive enough to put my foot through the door, and it sucked me in. I was like a cork going down a river, and that was it. So, and I remember when I retired, the assistant sheriff called and wanted the honor to present me my credentials. And he goes, and he's up at the roast, he's going through, I was going through your personnel file. And he goes, who the blank did you pay to have a career like this? With it. And I don't know.
Yeah.
With it.
John, thank you for the interview. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.